So if Wendy Allsop was running a campaign on accessibility and you wanted a one-word slogan or a couple of words as a slogan or phrase, what does it say on the side of that poster? What are you asking people to do?
Something along the lines of, not everyone can step up.
Welcome to Tidy People, a series that looks at everyday people who make a difference every day out in our communities. So hello and welcome to the third instalment of Tidy People. This week I'm joined by the wonderful Wendy Allsop, and we'll be talking all things Wendy and all things accessibility. So Wendy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Brilliant.
So to start off, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, my name is Wendy Allsop. I live in Tonypandy in the Rhondda. I've lived there for about 14 years with my husband, 40 years with my husband. And my family, my children, mostly grown up, but I've got a 12-year-old. Up until about 2 years ago, everything was absolutely fine. And then I was diagnosed with a condition which has limited my mobility, which has then gone on a knock-on effect to me actually realising how difficult it is for people with mobility issues to get around and actually have a normal life outside of their house.
Yeah, and I guess that's sort of where we met, really, wasn't it?
It was.
So let's call it inconsiderate parking, shall we?
Yes.
On the side of the streets in Pontypridd, then you couldn't get past two of our vans.
Yes.
Now, that's something not many people realise. And I think when we had that first chat, you were telling me about that world that you've discovered that you didn't realise people were being prevented accessing.
It was a bit of an eye-opener, really, because unless you're in that position, you don't realise. You scooter you past something, if you've got to shuffle sideways, you do. But then I've realised that people are thinking, oh, well, I'll park half on the pavement and half off, because that'll mean that something wide can get down the street. But unfortunately, if people like myself with mobility scooters or people in wheelchairs, even people with pushchairs, can't actually stay on the pavement then to get past. If you have a pushchair, you can sort of get off the pavement and go round. Unfortunately, if you've got a mobility scooter or if you're in a wheelchair and there is no dropped curb, you cannot get past. You have to retrace your steps, try and find a dropped curb to try and get across the road, which is really difficult. And it means that people with mobility issues have to go twice the distance than somebody that doesn't have issues with their mobility.
Yeah, and I think, I'm from the valleys myself, so I grew up in Tonrevel. I know some of those valley streets are very small, aren't they?
They are.
I guess, there's the risk of people having to go on into traffic as well. So just how widespread is the issue?
I think it is RCT widespread. I've been to Aberdare, I live in the Rhondda and I work in Pontypridd. There are shops everywhere that I have not got access to. There's a particular shop, I won't name them, who have got a post office, but their door is very, very small. And they say, ring if you have access issues. And it's up there. So unless you've got mobility to stand up, somebody that can't stand couldn't even, and they think, oh, they're being accessible, but in fact they're not. And it's if you try and go around shops in mobility scooters, because people seem to cram things together to get as much in the shop as they possibly can, then there's issues of trying to get around a very tight corner at the top of an aisle without actually taking one of the racks down with you. So it is very, very difficult. And I think it's RCT wide. There are not a lot of dropped curbs in side streets. Where I live in my street, there is not one dropped curb. So if I cannot park in front of my own house and it's not within walking distance, I have to phone my son and say, come and park my car because I can't. And then he'll have to come and deliver it to me the following day. I've also noticed that I've put a sign outside my window which says, accessibility, disabled parking is required here. It's not a legal requirement. The council at the moment, and have been for the past 2 years, are reviewing the situation to whether they will issue parking bays to disabled people. Don't know when they will actually get round to saying yes, they're going to continue, or no, they're not. So there's a lot of things that people don't actually realise, that if you see a blue sign and somebody needs access, they actually do. And it would be polite if you didn't park there and let people walk into their own homes. The problem that we have is that if you're not able to park there, you can't enforce somebody not parking there. It's a public road. So you stop going out. You don't have a social life. You don't go to any community meetings. You just don't go out after 5 o'clock in the evening, because the minute you get back at 6 or 7 in the evening or later, you're not able to park. So that is something that affects, and it's basically making people that have mobility issues prisoners in their own home.
It's strange, isn't it? Because I think Valley's people, by their nature, are very warm and welcoming and supportive of each other. So why it's strange that doesn't translate through into thinking more widely about sort of accessibility issues. How do you think we can sort of overcome that?
I think we have to raise awareness, and I wasn't aware until it happened to me. I will challenge anybody to spend 48 hours in a wheelchair or on a mobility scooter, and then they will realise things that they take for granted and they take no notice of actually become a huge obstacle to people. So I think there needs to be an awareness raised within the whole, possibly the country, but certainly within RCT.
And just circling back what you were saying about that shop as well, who guess well-intentionally, maybe they were aware of the access issues and were sort of well-intended, put a number, ring a bell.
Mm.
So they've thought about it, but how could they perhaps have improved their fix to that solution? Would it have been through like involving somebody like yourself or somebody with a disability? I
think it would. And I mean, situated where I work in Ponty, between the station and High Street and Taft Street, there's lots of people that go past, and not a day goes by that I do not see at least one person that's in a wheelchair or has a mobility scooter or has mobility issues. So it might be good for the retailers to look at their footfall and go, well, I'm sure they could find and any person that's got mobility issues, if you said to me tomorrow, look, do us a favour, can you come and see if you can get round our shop? If we space everything all right, just pop in for 5. Yeah, of course I would, no problem, fine. Because then you know that it's safe to go in that shop and you're not going to ruin all of their displays.
Yeah, I think it's great that you've gone on that learning journey as well, from not knowing anything about it, and I guess because you've had to learn about it, but the fact that you're trying to share that learning with other people, I think is really remarkable. What drives you to do that?
I have a 12-year-old child. That's what drives me. I've got to act, I've got to take her out, and I've got to be a mother to her. And in trying to do that, coming across certain obstacles has just made me, there's simple things like, don't put a pavement when you're going to pay for parking, because people in scooters can't get up the lip, It's just things like that. And I mean, I don't want to brag any particular place up, but we go to West Wales for holiday, and we go to a place called Saundersfoot, and they've got a lovely little shopping centre on the front. And even though every one of the shops and the restaurants that they've got there have got lips off their decking to get up, every morning they put out ramps. They put out metal ramps that go straight on, so nobody has to struggle and they just push straight up. And you can't go 100 yards without a drop curb.
Wow, I mean,
it's amazing.
Just popping out that little sort of ramp, it makes the world of difference, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've good Saundersfoot a lot, and I guess I myself haven't noticed that, but then I wouldn't need to notice it, would I?
Well, it's right where the car park is. Yeah. You look out, And then they've got those little surf shops, and they've got the fish eateries and things like that. And they're all accessible, and it's like going to a different world.
Wow, and it amazes me, like people like yourself are able to really tell that story really well. Is that something that you've always had in you? Have you always been a campaigner? Have you always been sort of in that space?
I'm half Irish. I've always got the rebel in me. It's the Celtic spirit between the Welsh and the Irish. It's, it happens. But yeah, I mean, I've always been fairly vocal on things that I think have been done wrong or have caused issues for others. As a school governor, when my other children were younger, I've stood in the middle of a road with a banner going, "We need a crossing here for the safety of the children." It is something that I always like to think, well, I'm going to stand up for the little man, because I do fancy that in society, unless you shout loud enough, nobody takes any notice.
Yeah, I mean, we've got lots of people having to shout about lots of things at the moment as well, haven't we? How do we make that awareness of access and disability rights come through that? I mean, not kind of ignoring intersectionality. You can be disabled and many other things as well, and have many other identities.
Yes.
But how do we sort of capture people's attention or imagination with it as well? So, like me, they start noticing that there are ramps around Saundersfoot.
I'm not too sure. Again, I think it comes down to public awareness. And I think, and I don't want to get political, but because of what has happened with the PIP and the disability issues that are happening at the moment, I think perhaps that has raised awareness a little bit towards the hardships and the barriers that disabled people. I'm lucky, I'm disabled, I've got a job and I can get from A to B on my scooter, but there are people out there that are afraid to go out because they're afraid they might not get back into their house. And it's all down to awareness, to make people that haven't got disabilities aware that if they've got to take a step up for something, then somebody might not be able to do it. Because you could step, but I couldn't, which also means that I have to go the long way round.
It makes you think about the wider impact of that as well. It's not just not being able to step up a step or feel comfortable leaving your parking space outside your house after 5 o'clock. That's belonging. That's not feeling like you can be a part of where you live.
It's almost isolating, because to a certain extent you're excluded from the workplace, you're excluded from community events, you're excluded from a social event, and this all leads to isolation, which is really not good. But unless people have the awareness and the consideration for others, then it's going to be an issue, and that's what frightens me, is that. And I don't want to knock the younger generation, but I think it's something that we should be highlighting. I mean, these days we teach first aid to children in school. Some schools do the British Sign Language in schools. Why can't we teach disability awareness in schools? It's just a matter of people realising they don't do it out of malice. Somebody doesn't park in front of a door out of malice. They do it because they're in a hurry, they want to get somewhere, they want to do something, they want to go wherever. And they just don't stop and think. So it's not out of malice, it's out of ignorance, I suppose, that they're ignorant of the issues that they could be causing.
And that's a really interesting point, actually, isn't it? Because I think it could be seen as malice, and you're absolutely right, it's absolutely not. But I guess it's how people then react to that challenge back. So you either react by inviting Wendy on a podcast to come and talk about it, or you go, oh, well, actually we didn't do it. How do you find that when you do challenge people on that? What are the general reactions?
The reaction that I've had from yourself has been very, very good. Look, we're really sorry we didn't do this. The reaction of individuals can be quite aggressive. I got just as much right to park here as you have. Go find somewhere else, with added language, which is not pleasant.
I mean, it's not pleasant, but it's also not practical. So
No.
you can't go somewhere else. They probably could.
Yeah.
And that's equity, isn't it?
It is.
Just to explain that, it's some people will need more support to do something than other people, and you having a parking space that is accessible is very different to me needing a parking space.
Yeah.
So if I take your space, you've got nowhere to go. But if you're in that space and you beat me to it by 1 minute, I go down the road and I park somewhere else, and that's it. That's the difference.
I mean, I've noticed it on social media, and I've always been one, regardless of my mobility issue, I've always been one that has had rants about people parking on zigzags outside schools, because that one is my serious pet hate. I hate it. And people just don't see, and I've seen it on social media where somebody has parked. Look, this woman is doing it all the time, parking at this place, and then everybody underneath seems to take up the mantle on both sides, and it can get really nasty. So you're always aware and very wary of of raising awarenesses of things that are disability or are people are parking in the wrong places, because they affect other people, because there's always somebody that comes back and you get a keyboard warrior that's not very nice.
Yeah. So if Wendy Allsop was running a campaign on accessibility and you wanted a one-word slogan or a couple of words as a slogan or phrase, what does it say on the side of that poster? What are you asking people to do?
Something along the lines of, not everyone can step up.
Ooh, I like that, because it's sort of challenging them to step up.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. See, this is why you're here today, because it's brilliant, and you've just come up with that off the cuff. That's brilliant. I think that's probably a strong message to sort of finish on, unless there's anything else you wanted to talk about. But
no.
Thank you so much. That was really lovely. I think you've ended on a really good message there. So not everyone can step up.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Wendy.
No problem. Been a pleasure. Thank you.
Tidy People is produced by Travellis Housing Association on behalf of the communities it serves. If you'd like to feature in one of our episodes, please get in touch at comms@travellis.co.uk. That's comms, COMMS, @travellis.co.uk.